New Jersey's full financial picture just came into focus. This is the Issues Watch podcast. Hi, I'm Jeff Kazerman, Vice President of Government Relations at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the Issues Watch podcast. In 2023, the NJCPA, working in conjunction with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, wrote legislation that was enacted into law. We called it the ACFR bill, which is short for New Jersey's Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It was the brainchild of some of our governmental accountants, and frankly, one of the advocacy initiatives that I'm most proud of in my 34 years here at the Society. It benefits not only CPAs and the business community, but all New Jerseyans, including lawmakers and the media, almost all of whom don't know that this critically important report exists. This new law is important because it promotes a better understanding of the state's complete financial picture, including off budget items like long term liabilities and independent authorities, and it goes way beyond the annual budget. It promotes this understanding by requiring the state auditor to write a plain language summary of the ACFR, taking a 400 plus page document written in accounting jargon and making it accessible to the lay public. It presents a readable summary of what is, in essence, the state's financial statements. The law went into effect this year, and the first report was issued in April. Here with me today is Dave Rousseau. Dave is the Vice President of the New Jersey Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. Before that, he served as State Treasurer for Governor John Corzine and has a 28-year career in budgetary and fiscal policy making for New Jersey. He is perfect for this interview. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
Fine, Jeff, and happy to join you today.
Thank you. So everyone knows about the state budget, but I've rarely met anyone other than some of our governmental accountants here at the CPA Society who even knows what an ACFR is. And that includes lawmakers and journalists, excepting, of course, John Reitmeyer and maybe one or two more. So what is the ACFR and why is it important?
Actually, Jeff, I mean, when I first came into government in 1987, I think we called this the CAFRA. It was the Consolidated Annual Financial Report is
Yes.
what everybody called about it, and it was more of a legal obligation to have an audit done of state government every year to make sure that nothing shady was going on behind the scenes. True, it used to be done actually be done by the end of the fall. Back when I first came into government, it would be done. I think the statutory date was the end of the calendar year. It's like it's a document where somebody can see how the state formed during the year prior. Again, it's past history, but we can learn from past history. One of the most important parts of it early on when I was in government was it gave us our first signal of how the state did in its revenue collections from the prior year. You'd know in November, you'd have an official document in November that said that, the collections for the prior fiscal year that had just finished on June 30th were $200 million above projected, or $100 million below projected. So you had an idea even well before the governor was going to give his next budget address, what at least that part of the budget was going to be. And over the years, it's the importance of it I think has expanded, and there have been changes at the federal level about what needed to be included, to the point where where it's a place where it's one document where you can see our debt levels just are not only our our bonded debt, or our non-bonded debt, and also more importantly over the last 2 decades is the, we'll call it the soft debt, because between our pension payments and our post-retirement medical. And I see it as a step forward on where we're going on disclosure, and it's one more tool
Right,
for
right,
those who want to understand the state budget to have.
right. So, well, you mentioned the budget, and I think everybody knows, reads about the state budget, the budget process, what's in it, what's not in it. But as I said before, I don't think too many people know about the ACFR. What do you think are like the most important items that people are missing because they only know about the budget? Like, what are some of the key things that it's really unfortunate that people don't know about that are in the ACFR?
I'm gonna go four things. The total amount that we actually spend, because the state budget, as we all know, only reflects on budget spending, and
Right,
that's things that the legislature. It doesn't include below the line spending. It doesn't include a lot of the fee revenues that are dedicated. It doesn't include federal funds. So that you look at this document and you can see that no, it would, whatever the FY24 budget, yeah, what the legislature passed and what was advertised in June and was, let's say, a budget in the mid 50s. The CAFRA shows that year we actually spent $86 billion. So I mean, it's one place where you see all of the
uh,
spending in one place, and then the other things I mentioned before. It shows the debt, the debt. It gives you a good example. It gives you good information on the debt level. It gives you good information and like I said, both the hard debt in bonds and then the soft debt in pensions, and it also gives an ability for people to see not really this piece of it, but the more detailed CAFRA. It'll show you more information about where we missed on our revenue numbers, where we missed on our spending numbers. It gives you that differential between budgeted and actual thing, and that sometimes can be interesting to look at, and sometimes it could be, oh, that's just, okay, you're off by a 0.1%, no big
right.
deal. But if you're off by, you know 10-15%, well, why? And that, now it's still on the negative side, it still does not have even this document, or even the detailed CAFR has not not the detail, and not at the level of detail as the 400-page
Right.
governor's budget message, the lie. And I think it's just, if you look at all of the documents together, you look at the governor's budget message, you look at the information that's available, you look at the all analysis that they do on every department's budget that's online. Again, years ago it wasn't online. That's online. I'm most proud of, during, I can't remember which of the three governors it was that we did it, but there was so much information out there on the proposed budget. And then you look at the Appropriation Act. There was so much information on the proposed budget that we created in the fall a document called the Citizens Guide to the Budget,
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
actually a
yeah.
document that
I
tells
heard
you
about
what
that.
actually is in the final budget. So, and then now you look at this. So all of those things together, for the person who wants to, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to think of who they really are, but the person who wants to really get a good handle on
Right.
how their tax dollars are being spent.
So let's take a look at the report and what it shows. And I think everybody in New Jersey knows that we've got a big problem with our pensions and healthcare benefits for public employees. Somebody told me, or maybe it's in the report, that we're the worst shape of all of our neighboring states. But what are some of the other red flags in this report that we don't hear about?
A clarification on the pension and health benefits and post retirement health benefits. Sometimes it's difficult to compare state to state. New Jersey, if for most people may not know, New Jersey is responsible for the pensions of not only our employees that work for the state government proper, but
Right.
also for teachers. 2/3 of our pension obligation is not people like me who used to work in state government. It's actually It's actually teachers. And looking at the list, you don't know, in a lot of states, the teacher pension obligation and the post-retirement medical obligation, if there is one, is the responsibility of the local government, the local school district, or whatever. In the
Right.
state of New Jersey, it's the states. Two-thirds of our pension number, and probably, and I'm guessing two-thirds of our OPEB number, are probably um, due to teachers and school employees. So that's something that, and years ago in the early 90s, a governor tried to shift that, and there was a revolt in Trenton among the teachers and shift it back to the local school district, saying, well, wait a minute, you guys are the ones who are setting the salaries. You guys should be the ones responsible for the cost. But that failed. But I mean, I think that is just to clarify that yes, we look
Right.
bad, and we made bad decisions from 1987 on, not putting money into the system. Um, Other than that, I don't. You don't see it here. You don't see it in here, really, the glaring structural deficit that we have. Where I guess you can find it in here places where we're spending more money than we're bringing in. But because of how the accounting happens in here, it's not as obvious. We many discussions about the structural deficit
Are
that
you
occur.
talking about the just the operating budget, right? The
Yes, of
yearly.
the of the of the
Okay.
of the of the operating, but yeah, the structural
Right.
deficit of the operating, but you really don't get that in here.
One of the great aspects of this plain language act for summary, something that's not in the full act for, is that and you kind of alluded to this, is that in key areas, it compares our numbers against surrounding states. And I think that's critical because despite the political rhetoric from both sides, a government entity is not the same as a business. And it's important to compare our state to other states, not some big corporation. So, how do we stack up against our neighboring states? Are there any areas where we really shine or where we really lag?
I think the lagging is what we talked about before, the pension and the post-retirement medical, and that may be partial that lag. Yes, partial of that lag is not making payments, and partial of that lag may be who we're covering versus who they are covering.
Right.
I think other than that, I mean, I think it puts us all on a relatively, again, our surplus is getting back up to where some of our other neighboring states are.
Wait,
I
Dave,
don't
not not if they don't address the structural deficit,
Right. Oh
right?
no, 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 no. I
Which we've
totally
been
agree with that.
working on. I
Everything
know.
goes hand in hand. One of the things I
Yes.
didn't see in here, and I don't know if it's in here or not, is if there is something in here on a spending per capita. I'm not sure if I saw that in here. Is that in? Do you remember seeing that in here, Jeff?
I, I don't know, but it's spent all government spending, you mean, right? Or states.
Yeah,
It should be because that's
yeah.
obviously critically important, right?
Yeah, and again, and look, this is the first year of this document.
Yeah.
This document is going to be, people will get back to them and say, hey, you know what? A chart about, hey, take our total spending, divide it by the total number of people in this state. Let's see what our number is. Let's see what New
Yeah.
York's number is. Let's see what Pennsylvania number. And again, though, sometimes it's a I'm not going to say apples to oranges comparison, but sometimes it's a Macintosh to some other type of Apple comparison about what's in the state's
No, no, you're
budget.
right. You know, it's funny you should,
I
well,
mean,
not
remember, we
funny.
have one of the things we don't have in here or anywhere in our budget, which may be in the New York budget. I don't think it is in the New York budget because they now have throughway authority or something like that. Our turnpike, our parkway, and our Atlantic City Expressway don't show up in this CAFR, don't show anywhere because they're like totally independent. Some other state may have all of their roads inside the
Right.
budget. So even when you look at things like
Yes.
that, you've got to turn around and say, well, what?
Yes.
But it
Yep.
gives you a better idea. If we're
Right.
spending 25% more than state A, that should be a flag. If we're spending 25% less, does that mean we're more efficient? Maybe not. Maybe it means they have more things in their whatever. So I think that's something that I would like, that would be great to see. Like I said, I
Right.
don't remember seeing it.
You know, it's interesting again that you mentioned that because there is such a difference in what a state is responsible for paying for versus a local government versus and what goes into their reports. And I first realized how how different they all are. When somebody gave us an analysis of Virginia, like our pension, all those things, and I was like, wow, we are bad. But then somebody else gave us an explanation of what goes into their budget and what it covers and all that. And then it was just a completely different document.
Yeah,
So that is really important. So we decided to draft this bill because, as you know, the ACFR is 400 plus pages, filled with accounting jargon, and really that no one other than those who work in governmental accounting could understand it, let alone who would take the time to read a 400-page document. So now we have this comprehensible summary that's accessible to all. What role do you think it can play going forward?
Oh, I think this could be I think this could be big time because I'll even tell you, as a state treasurer or as a senior, look, I know everything in that effort. I wasn't an accountant. I didn't, I focused on the important things in it, and one of
Right,
the other things, and it's in the big document, and it's in this document is sometimes the statistical section is great to have where you're able to see 10-year, trends on population, trends on income, trends on GDP, trends like that. But I think that this should be mandatory reading for at a minimum, every member of the two budget committees, and
right,
probably every legislator.
right.
Again, I'm afraid that it's gonna, they were probably all
Yes,
emailed it by the auditor, and or at least their staffs. Maybe the staffs, but
right.
it should, and I think is it again. Remember, this is the first year of it, Jeff. So let's see how you know maybe this podcast will draw more attention to it,
Right.
and
I am writing a note here, Dave, because you reminded me that I should put a note in my calendar, a recurring calendar item to make sure that we send it out to the legislature every year with a press release. Now, by the way, one
yeah,
of the other good things you mentioned that everybody on the budget committee should take a look at this, which of course we agree with, but there is also in the statute a requirement for the state auditor to appear before the budget committees and do an analysis or explanation of what's in the act. For now, I don't know. I haven't seen anything so far where the auditor testified on that, but it is only the first year.
it is. Yeah. Well, I think what's also we all remember earlier I talked about the other information that's out there that's available for people to look at. Um, you said even the CAFRA, the bigger book and stuff, it doesn't get into the detail on the book. Remember, the Office of Legislative Services, the state auditor person. Remember, the state auditor is in the legislative branch
Oh,
of
right.
government, and they do on routine schedules audits of every single department or division or things like that. And that's where you get into the nuts and bolts of, is our Medicaid program being run efficiently? Is program A, and that's where things are more likely to policy issues or wa- wasteful in quotes
Right.
spending will pop up rather than this consolidated broad picture of all of government.
Right.
And also, if you remember, like it's only been the last 20 years, sometime within the last 20 years, that the auditor now has the ability, the speaker and Senate president, I think, can direct the auditor to do a performance
Oh,
audit
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of a
Yes,
department,
yes.
not just the nuts and bolts. Okay, here's yeah. Did they apply? Were the laws done? Did they apply all common accounting practices? Did the routine audits that
Right.
company A would do for each one of their divisions? But they were also able to say, look, what's going on in the division of X in a department. We want you to do a performance audit on it. And I don't know how many performance audits have been
Yeah, I was
done
going to
over the years.
ask you that. I
I
haven't
don't think
heard
there's been
much.
many because it's always been getting a difficulty in getting people to agree to do them because of, we'll
The
put it, politics with a small p.
Yeah, yeah,
Do we
yeah,
really want to shed light on
yeah.
this?
Right, right. So, do you have any final thoughts on the ACFR that you'd like to share with our listeners?
like I said, I think I think it builds on everything we talked about before on what's out there and what you mentioned that my successor, Andrew Siminoff Aristoff mentioned that there are documents out there and that all of them taken in a whole, if you know what to use them for, can be a great tool. And like I said, this is the first year of this thing. I hope that the legislature follows, normally the legislature likes to criticize departments and the executive branch for not doing what they're supposed to do on the
Right,
statute.
right.
Bringing somebody in to talk about this, that's on the legislature. This is all in house. This guy works for
Yes,
them. So hopefully
yes.
they'll do it, and hopefully it'll draw more attention to it, at least to those members of the legislature. I think it's important that people like you, yeah, you do an email blast saying, look, I'm sure you also got this from the Office of Legislative Service and the state auditor, but hey, the New Jersey the association helped write this law, and this is why we did it, and this is the
Right.
result of it.
Well, Dave, thank you for joining us today. And we'll have to talk budget and fiscal policy on another day and bring you back for that. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks for listening or watching. To access the plain language summary of the ACFR, visit njcpa.org/advocacy.